Good evening, and thank you for taking part in a telephone town hall with 4th District Congressman Bruce Westerman. The Congressman will be speaking to you tonight about his work on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, overturning last-minute regulations handed down by the Obama administration, and the health care bill being considered in Congress, and much more. During the call, the Congressman will answer your questions on these and other topics. To ask a question, simply press *3 to be connected to an operator. Again, press *3 to ask Congressman Bruce Westerman a question. And now, 4th District Congressman Bruce Westerman.
Thank you, Ryan, and good evening to everyone. This is Congressman Bruce Westerman, your representative for the 4th Congressional District. I'm calling tonight from Washington, D.C. for a live telephone town hall. Appreciate you joining in. On tonight's call, we will discuss a variety of issues important to constituents back home in Arkansas. During this call, you may ask questions by pressing *3. Again, if you want to ask me a question, just press *3 and you'll be placed in the queue. Before I start our discussion of legislative business here in D.C., I would like to extend my thoughts to the people of Newton County who are recovering from a tornado earlier this week. As we begin tonight's call, I want to bring you up to speed on what's been happening here in Congress. In the 115th Congress, I've been appointed to the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. This is very important for the people of Arkansas as we focus on infrastructure projects that are important not only just to District 4, but the entire state and really the region of the country that we live in. We have high priority projects such as Interstates 49 and 69, as well as river infrastructure in need of repair and upgrade on the Arkansas River, all the way from Crawford County to the Mississippi River and from the Louisiana line to Camden on the Ouachita River. And there's also, we've got the Red River in the district, so a lot of navigable waterways. Of course, the Red River is only navigable up to Shreveport now, but maybe someday it'll be further up. So my work on the T&I committee will involve much more than just roads and rivers. We had a hearing just yesterday focused on air transportation. My subcommittee assignments are aviation, highways and transit, and railroads, pipelines, and hazardous materials. So there's a lot of work for me to do on transportation, but in addition to my work on transportation, I kept my seats on the Budget Committee and on the Natural Resources Committee. And on the Natural Resources Committee, I'm serving as the Vice Chairman of the Public Lands Subcommittee. We're doing a lot of Budget Committee meetings. That's taking up a lot of my time right now, and we'll probably talk about that a little more throughout the call. My working committees aren't the only way that I'm trying to work hard for Arkansans. Since the start of the new Congress, I've joined with my colleagues to use the Congressional Review Act to stop last-minute rules passed down by the Obama administration in its final days. We've stopped the Department of Interior's stream protection rule, as well as rules by the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Bureau of Land Management, and others. I believe we've passed 14 Congressional Review Act bills out of the House. There's been at least 3 of them signed in the Senate, and I think there will be several more that make it through the Senate and get to the President's desk. Overreach by the last administration extended into all areas of American life over the past 8 years. The use of the CRA has started the process of reversing the overreach. This will protect American people and create a better environment for adding the jobs that we so desperately need in our economy. Together with President Trump's directive for executive agencies to remove 2 regulations for every new one they put in place, Congress and the President are working together to put America back to work through less overreach and more freedom. Again, this is Congressman Bruce Westerman, and you're participating in a live telephone town hall. To ask a question, press *3. Again, to ask a question, press *3. Yesterday, Congress took action to protect the American people and strengthen our defenses by passing the Defense Appropriations Act. This bill provides $215 billion for key readiness programs that prepare our troops for combat and peacetime missions. Additionally, it invests $117 billion for equipment and upgrades. As many of you know, defense plays a unique and important role in the life of many 4th District residents, with many who are employed either for the military and National Guard at sites across the state or for defense contractors in locations such as Camden. As a member of Congress, I will continue to fight for the men and women who fight for America. And before we get started with questions, I briefly want to mention the health care bill introduced in the House this week. I'm sure many of you will have questions about that, and questions as I do as we're working through this. Republicans in Congress are working to roll back Obamacare and replace it with a free market solution that works for the American people. As this bill works its way through committees and eventually to the House, I will continue to ask questions, seek counsel from my constituents, and offer suggestions and amendments if possible to make the bill better. So with that said, let's get started. Again, to ask a question, press *3. Press *3 to ask a question. Our first question tonight comes from Dolores. Are you on the line, Dolores?
Yes.
Okay. How are you tonight?
Pretty good.
Where are you calling from?
From Huntsville.
Okay, good. Up in the northern part of my district there in Madison County. What's on your mind tonight, Dolores? I
want to know what y'all are going to do for the elderly. We're trying to live on less than $7,500 a year and less than $60 food stamps a month. Now, our local congressman couldn't make it on over $15,000 for a part-time job, plus they had their regular jobs and retirement. So if they couldn't make it on that, how do y'all expect us to make it on $7,500 a year?
Yeah, well, Dolores,
all the programs are getting cut. There's elderly being cut off of the Medicaid program, being cut off of food stamps too.
Are you talking about the Medicaid program or the Medicare program?
The Medicaid program.
Okay. Typically, Medicaid's for people up to the age of 65. There are some supplemental Medicaid programs that help with Medicare, but you bring up an interesting question and something that I'm working hard for every day, and that's how to keep these safety net programs in place that are there to help people who truly need help. We've got a Social Security program that the Congressional Budget Office tells us that by 2034 on the current path is going to be insolvent. You're not even hearing anything coming out of D.C. about what to do to shore up the Social Security program. Most of the conversation has been around health care, which Medicare is a very important part of that. And again, the Congressional Budget Office tells us on the trajectory we're on that Medicare could be insolvent by 2030. So these are real issues that we've got to take a hard look at and come up with ways to make those programs sustainable for the future. We've seen tremendous increases in health care costs across the country, and that's what we're targeting with this health care bill, to repeal the Obamacare bill and put something in place that's going to allow market factors to work to allow people to get better quality care and hopefully to drive the cost of health care down. It's making up about 20% of the gross domestic product of our economy right now, and it's driving our federal budget higher than any other component of the budget through these programs. So these are problems that didn't start overnight. It's going to take time to solve them, but we are working hard to try to come up with solutions that keep these programs solvent. And these are programs, when we talk about Social Security and Medicare, these are programs that people have invested in during their working careers. And I'm going to use a word that's not a bad word in the sense that you're entitled to get your money back out of those programs because you put money into those programs while you were working. So I think the President's been very clear that he's going to work hard to try to make these programs solvent as well. We've got another question here from Roger. Are you calling from Clarksville tonight? Are you on the line?
Yes, sir. I'm glad you're doing this program. That's great. My question is, our new president, Donald Trump, is trying to get this bill to stop the immigration coming in from all of those countries where we know they're Islamic are coming in and they can cause havoc in our country. We've seen it, and yet a lousy judge in Washington or whatever is stopping our president. It just doesn't make sense. How does he have that much power to stop our president where it's written right in the Constitution that he has the legal right to do what he's doing?
Yeah, well, Roger, I appreciate you joining in on the call tonight and your concern about the events that are going on. I think you're referring to the first executive order that the president made on immigration, and it was stopped by courts. I think it was just yesterday or today that he put out a new executive order, and that was actually on Monday. It included, I believe, 6 different countries: Syria, Somalia, Iran, Libya, Sudan, and Yemen. And what he's put in place is a 90-day ban on visas, and that's so that the program can be reviewed. And I think the president has the best interest of the country at heart in keeping us safe. So I'm glad to see that even though the courts defeated his order the first time, that he went back, and hopefully he's got an order in place now that can stand up to the courts. It's a fundamental duty of the federal government to protect our citizens, and it's the president's responsibility as the executive to enforce that. So I think he's leading on this. I know that not everybody's happy about it, but I believe based on the information he's got, he's making the best decision. And this order follows a bill that we passed out of the House in the last Congress that never got anywhere because the previous president would have vetoed it. So if you're on the line tonight and you would like to get our e-newsletter, you can press 1, and we'll be happy to get you the newsletter that we put out every week so that you can keep up with what's going on here. Again, if you would like to opt into the e-newsletter, press 1 at this time. If you didn't get that, to opt into the newsletter, just press 1 at this time. Okay, I believe we've got Joyce on the line. Are you? Okay, this is coming from an online question. This is from Joyce, and she asked the question: do you support repeal and replace? And there's a lot of different versions of what repeal and replace mean, but I absolutely support repealing the current law, the Affordable Care Act, also commonly referred to as Obamacare. I've said that from the time I've been in elected office, going back to my State House days, that we need to repeal this law, and we need to put something in place that's patient-centered, that's going to allow the markets to function, that's going to create less dependence on government services, especially for able-bodied working-age adults. I'm also for giving people who are truly in need of help, such as elderly people, disabled people, blind people, and children that are in need. We need to have a strong safety net program that helps those populations out. So I do support repealing and fixing health care. If you're on the line and you would like to get the newsletter, press 1. We've got another question tonight from, I think this is Mike in Alma. Are you on the line with me, Mike?
Yes, I am, sir.
Appreciate you taking time to call in and ask a question. What's on your mind tonight, Mike?
Well, I was very fortunate with the ACA. I'm a low-income person, and with ACA, I was given health insurance. I've had health insurance since I was in the Navy back in 1967. Never used it, and have never used it. And now at 63, excuse me, 64, the ACA offered me insurance, and with that, I had no copays with vision, dental, whatever. And then at age 65, I went on to Medicare, and that cost me about $150 a month off of my Social Security. Can the new program that the Republican Party, and by the way, I voted for you, do better?
I appreciate your support there.
Do better, yeah, do better than what I had as the ACA. That's my question. It seemed like a pretty good program, and I was very happy with it. And I had, like I say, no copays. And actually, when I turned 65, it got more expensive. So, can you, with this new program, come up with something better than what I already had?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. It sounds like you were on what in Arkansas started off as the private option, and I think now it's called the Arkansas
Yes, it was.
Works Program.
It was the private option. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and now that you're past the age to be on the Medicaid expansion portion, you're on Medicare.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So, when we're talking about benefits to people who are getting those, it's hard to beat a plan that's private insurance, that has no premium cost, that has no deductible, has no copay, and is widely acceptable. I've not heard of any medical provider that will turn away those Blue Cross plans that are on the Arkansas Works program. So the short answer is I don't think you can devise a program that gives somebody any better benefits than that, because it's kind of the Cadillac of what health insurance would be. Now, the converse to that is there are people who had health insurance through their employer who've seen their premium skyrocket. They're not getting the same kind of deal because they're having to pay more for their insurance. The deductibles have gotten higher. The copays have gotten higher. And we've got a situation where people have health insurance that they don't even want to use it because of the cost of the deductibles. There were nationwide, the number, I'll give the benefit of the doubt, some of the highest numbers I've heard are 20 million people across the country that benefited from programs like Medicaid expansion and the exchanges. Really about 14 million were in the Medicaid expansion program, which Arkansas Works and the private option are part of that. And those people benefited. I've talked to people in the state who have had plans like you had, Mike, but that's still about 7% of the country's population. A large portion of the remaining 93% have seen higher cost and fewer benefits. One of the things that's coming out now is that one of the highest percentages or portions of what hospitals call uncompensated care cost, or providers call uncompensated care cost, is when, and that's when a service is provided and nobody pays for it, is coming from people with health insurance that can't afford to pay the deductibles. So we've got to find a program that works for everyone. And I'm a supporter of block grants. That's not what's in the current health care bill that's being run through the House, but I think there's a chance we could still get block grants in it that would give Arkansas the flexibility to create programs for those who are truly in need and for low-income people that might have a small copay with it or might have a deductible with it, that would require everybody that's getting those benefits to have some skin in the game. But right now, even with what Arkansas did with the Medicaid money, the federal government is being too strict on what those plans have to cover. So I hope that answered your question there. I've got another question for you all. We've been talking about health care, and that is, do you support the current Obamacare repeal and replace plan? If you do, press 1 for yes. If not, press 2 for no. Again, the question is, do you support the current Obamacare repeal and replace plan? Press 1 for yes and 2 for no. Okay, we're staying in the River Valley here. Looks like we got a question from Charleston. Carl, are you on the line?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for taking time to join the call tonight and to call in with a question. What's on your mind?
Well, Bruce, I'd like to start by telling you my wife and I support you and appreciate that you stand to your integrity against bad odds, and we just wanted you to know that. My question is about infrastructure.
Yes, sir.
We travel a lot to Shreveport, Louisiana,
and
we were wondering if there's any chance that during the infrastructure increase that President Trump is going to try to start, whether 49 South, from south of Fort Smith to Ashdown, has any opportunity to be completed.
Yeah, and Carl, the answer to that is I don't know for sure, but I know that I'm on the Transportation Committee, and if there's any way at all I can have input on where these infrastructure projects take place, Interstate 49 will be a very high priority for me, as well as Interstate 69. You know, there's probably very few people who travel around the back roads of the 4th District more than I do, so I feel your pain driving from my home in Hot Springs all the way down to Ashley County to cross it, and Hamburg all the way up to Madison County, Huntsville. I spend a lot of time on Highway 71 there on the western side of the state, and I know firsthand how nice it would be if we could get 4 lanes down from Van Buren all the way down to Ashdown. And there are communities along that route. You've got Mena there, you've got DeQueen, and all those towns on the western side of the state would greatly benefit from that, but really the whole state, I believe, would benefit from it. One of the concerns that I hear that you all may not hear is that there's a lot of traffic that moves in and out of Texas. So there are people in Texas who are concerned about infrastructure in Arkansas, and Interstate 49 and 69 both come into play. You may or may not know that the Panama Canal has been widened, so there's larger ships going in and out of the Panama Canal, which means there's more goods that are being shipped out of the ports in Texas, more goods coming into the ports in Texas. And right now, if you're coming out of Texas into Arkansas, you're pretty much limited to Interstate 30. So the north-south route would be great. Interstate 69 will go from Houston all the way to Detroit. And these, I think, are not just high-priority projects for the 4th District and for the state, but these are high-priority projects for the region and the country. So there's a lot of questions to be answered on what will be in the infrastructure package, how we will fund that infrastructure package, but I feel good about the opportunities for Arkansas in improving our infrastructure. And again, it's not just the interstates, it's the lock and dams on the Arkansas River. I've seen studies that show that if one of those dams go down, and the Corps of Engineers tells us that the Tenener gates on the dams are in need of a lot of maintenance, one of those gates go down, it'll automatically put 100 or more trucks on Interstate 40, because people that are shipping along the river will have to get their goods to market, and they'll call the trucking companies, and we'll see an almost immediate impact of more trucks on Interstate 40. So there's a lot of issues with infrastructure, and I'm happy to be on the committee and to be able to have a say in that. Okay, as we move on, tonight we've not only got people who are on the telephone, but I understand that Channel 4029 in Fort Smith is live streaming our town hall on their Facebook. And we've got a question from Sarah Marlowe, who's listening to that. The question is, why give huge tax cuts to wealthy? How does ACA repeal add to the deficit? Okay, let's take the first question, why give huge tax cuts to the wealthy? I'm not aware that we're giving huge tax cuts to the wealthy. We have a plan to do tax reform after we get through health care. I think this tax reform plan could be better for working Americans than anyone else, because it could mean more jobs, and not just jobs in the United States, but high-paying jobs that people can make a career out of, wages where people can raise a family and grow communities. So the tax plans that I'm seeing proposed would be good for businesses in the country, and it would also be good for individuals. So there's another question about that Sarah has about how does ACA repeal add to the deficit, and the bill that's being run through the committees here in the House is yet to have a score from the Congressional Budget Office, so I can't answer that tonight, but that's something that I'm very concerned with because I'm on the Budget Committee, and the thought is that it will not add to the deficit, that it will actually lower the deficit. Okay, so as we move along, I've got a call here from Ann on the line. Are you on the line with me, Ann?
I am. How are you, Bruce?
I'm doing well. Good to talk to you tonight. Appreciate you.
Proud of you, all that you're doing. We just really love everything you do. But I keep hearing what they're going to do with Obamacare, and it doesn't sound like complete repeal, get rid of the whole thing because it's so bad, and then start all over again. I just don't hear that from anybody, and I think that's what Trump promised, and I think that's what we'd like to see happen.
Okay, that's a great question, something that's been talked about a lot lately, especially with the health care bill that's in the House right now, and the health care bill that's going through the House is not a full repeal of Obamacare, and I can explain why it's not that. We're doing this through a process called budget reconciliation. I'm on the Budget Committee, so this bill will go through the Budget Committee before it gets to the Rules Committee and then on the floor for a vote. But there are budget rules in the House and the Senate, and for anything to be done through budget reconciliation, it has to meet certain guidelines that are established in these rules. Now, the benefit of using budget reconciliation is that whatever passes through budget reconciliation can go through the Senate on a simple majority vote. If it goes through the House, anything's a simple majority vote. But getting through the Senate, you need a simple majority, or you need 60 votes unless it's through budget reconciliation. So a full repeal of Obamacare through budget reconciliation, it can't happen. Now, to do a full repeal of Obamacare, we could do a bill in the House to do that and probably pass it pretty easily. But when it gets to the Senate, because of this cloture rule, the Senate would probably hit a snag with it. But we're looking at a three-pronged approach on health care. The first part of it is to use budget reconciliation to repeal, I believe it's every single tax penalty in Obamacare. We can do a lot on Medicaid through budget reconciliation, and those are most of the issues in the Affordable Care Act, but again, they're not all of the issues. Second phase is with the new Health and Human Services Director, Dr. Tom Price, who was the chairman of my Budget Committee. President Trump picked him to be the Health and Human Services Secretary. Under current law, he has a lot of flexibility to make administrative changes. So he's working hard to start making administrative changes that can help with the healthcare situation. And then the third and final part are to do those bills that repeal the remaining parts of Obamacare and do things that we would like to do that we can't do in budget reconciliation. One of those is to buy health insurance across state lines. We can't do that in budget reconciliation because of the budget rules. But we will have a bill later on that will pass out of the House and get it to the Senate, and hopefully they'll be able to get that passed and get it on the President's desk. One part of the Affordable Care Act that we can't repeal, so I've been told in the budget reconciliation process, is something that's called minimum essential benefits. The Affordable Care Act said that an insurance plan has to have all these essential benefits, and you hear stories about single men that are 58 years old that are buying a plan, but it has to have maternity coverage. It's got to cover breast cancer screenings, and the insurance company's hands are tied on being able to offer products that people want to buy. I think that's one reason that we saw a lot of young people choose not to buy insurance and to pay the penalty under the Affordable Care Act. So it's important that at some point in time we pass these laws and get them over to the Senate, and that they get the votes they need to get them on the President's desk to do full repeal. If we could do a full repeal bill in the House, I would certainly vote for it right now. But the word is the Senate couldn't get that passed. So if you look at everything that's going on with the confirmation hearings for the President's cabinet, if you look at the Supreme Court justice hearings that will take place, the Senate's calendar is pretty compressed, and we need to be sending bills over to them that they can get passed and get on the President's desk. Okay, as we take a break here, got another question for you. If you're a veteran, please press 1 for yes. If you're a veteran, press 1 for yes. And I'll say to all of our veterans on the line, thank you for your service, as well as thank you for joining us here tonight. Again, if you're just joining us, this is Congressman Bruce Westerman. If you would like to ask a question, press *3 at any time. To ask a question, press *3 at any time. This question is coming from Angie. Are you on the line with me, Angie?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Where are you calling from?
A little place called Sheridan, Arkansas.
Oh, I know right where Sheridan, Arkansas is. I was looking at my calendar in April, and I think I've got some appointments over in Sheridan, Arkansas. They've got us. We're going to be here the whole month of March, and rightly so. But I always look forward to getting back to the district and visiting places like Sheridan and all the other what I call the heart of America in the 4th District of Arkansas. So what
country spot?
Yeah, the salt and earth, or salt and light people of the earth that I think live in rural Arkansas. So what's your question tonight, Angie?
Well, number one, I want to applaud you for who you are and what you stand for. I think that it's horrible that our country is almost in a civil war over people not getting their way. You know, that's pretty silly. But
yeah.
My question is this. There's so many things that we could do to stop some of this freeloading off of the government, per se, if they would just put in effect the drug test on people that are getting unemployment, food stamps, all those kind of things. Because I actually know of a person that sells their food stamps to buy drugs. Now and then we're having to feed the children at the school to make sure that they are fed, which I wouldn't stop that, but you know what I'm saying? There's
there are children who, of no fault of their own, find themselves in situations dealing with bad decisions by their parents. We certainly shouldn't be punishing them. And your question on drug testing, one of these Congressional Review Acts, I mentioned we'd passed 14 of them out of the House. It's House Joint Resolution 42. The Department of Labor made a rule that stopped states from drug testing unemployment recipients. That was one of the rules done by the last administration. So we passed a Congressional Review Act bill that disapproved of that rule, and it came up in the House for a vote. I obviously voted for it, and it passed the House on February 15th of this year. So that bill is over in the Senate now. It's one of them that if they'll take it up and pass it and put it on the President's desk, not only, and this is the thing about a Congressional Review Act, not only will it disallow that rule that the Department of Labor made, it will prevent that rule from coming back up because Congress disapproved of the rule in the Congressional Review Act. But I learned this starting with my service in the state legislature. If there's a government program out there, it can be abused. Now that I'm in Congress, I hear stories like you told a lot more than I would like to hear them. There are probably many people on the line who know somebody who's drawing Social Security disability that works odd jobs for cash. And we could spend a lot of time talking about that, but we've got to do things to get more integrity in our programs and make sure that these taxpayer dollars that the government's using for these programs are going to the people who are truly in need and that their needs are being met. Okay, we've got another question here. Tammy, are you on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Pettigrew, Arkansas.
Okay. What's on your mind tonight, Tammy?
Actually, I have two questions, please. One is I was wondering where you stand on the the Hearing Protection Act, and if you know when or if that might go into effect.
Yeah, that's the bill on that is House Resolution, I believe that's 367, and that gives or it eliminates a $200 tax on silencers, and it also preempts state laws that ban silencers. I'm an original co-sponsor on that bill. I'm also a member of the Congressional Sportsman's Caucus, and a lot of these silencers are used not only to dampen the noise, but also to dampen the recall, because you have kids that are involved in shooting sports. And this to me is just a common sense thing and something the government shouldn't be getting involved in the first place, as far as stopping manufacturers from coming up with these silencers, or they've got another name for it, but basically it silences the sound out of the muzzle and dampens the recoil. So I'm not sure when that'll get passed, but I think it's one that, with me being on the Natural Resources Committee, I'll be able to help push that, and I know the Congressional Sportsman's Caucus is in favor of that bill as well. Okay, I've got another online question coming. This is from Dylan, and he says that Trump's situation is disturbing to him. Why should we believe his campaign had no interactions with Russia? This is something that's been in the news a lot lately. We have committees in Congress that are put in place to deal with that. One of those is the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman Nunes is the chairman of that committee. I know they are looking into this, but when they look into that information, it's classified information. I'm not on the committee, and if I had been briefed on what was happening in the committee, I would be violating the law if I discussed what was going on. But I've got confidence that the House Intelligence Committee will check this out. I also know that the House Oversight Committee that's chaired by Jason Chaffetz from Utah, that they're looking at this, and I believe if there's anything to it, we'll know about it. Next, we've got another question for you, this time involving taxes. And my question is, do you support a fairer tax code or a more fair tax code? If you do, press 1 for yes or 2 for no. Again, if you support a fair tax code, press 1 for yes or 2 for no. Going back to the phone lines, is it Scott on the line? Or Scoots? Scoots, are you on the line with me?
Yes, sir.
Where are you calling from tonight?
Lamar, Arkansas.
Lamar. Well, the River Valley is hitting it hard on the calls tonight. Y'all are being well represented.
I've got a question. Every day somewhere in Arkansas, an illegal immigrant is being arrested, whether it's a felony or a misdemeanor. Why is law enforcement from local and state police not turning in illegal immigrants that are arrested for any crime? They're serving their time and being released back into Arkansas instead of being turned over to ICE or any other federal deportation agencies.
Okay. Well, I'm not aware that that's happening. Sounds like you may have some better knowledge on that, but I believe that's something that the current administration is probably going to crack down on a little bit harder. I know that when the president talks about illegal immigration and illegal immigrants, he specifically targets those who are breaking the law here, that are here, or they're not just breaking the law by being here illegally, they're breaking the law with actions that they're doing. So if you'd like to contact my office with additional details on that, the phone number to my office here in D.C. is 202-375 or 275. I'm sorry, I'm getting the numbers. 202-225-3772. I'll get it out here in a minute. Again, if you'd like to contact my office about this issue or any other issue, the phone number here is 202-225-3772. And you can also go to westerman.house.gov, and that's our website where you can contact us through the website. And moving back to the questions, Ben's on the line. I think you're on the line. Are you here with me, Ben?
Yes.
And where you're calling from where tonight?
From Monticello.
Yeah. There's some good duck hunting down around Monticello, and a lot of good things in Monticello. So appreciate you joining with us. What's your question tonight, Ben?
I have another question on infrastructure.
Yes.
We have a lot of crumbling infrastructure, and we spend a lot of money to build new roads, but not a lot on maintenance. One of the things I'm looking at is we built 530 south of Pine Bluff that dead ends into the woods with a bridge over nothing but dirt.
I've driven it many times.
Yeah, there's over $200 million spent buying the right of way and that to build a 2-lane road. When we already had 2-lane roads running in that direction. I think that for the same money we could have 4-lane Highway 425 from Pine Bluff all the way to the Louisiana line, and which has already been 4-lane from Louisiana south to Interstate 10. It's not interstate, true enough, but it is a 4-lane highway. It would be a great relief if something like one of the questions earlier, or that you pointed out earlier, if one of the dams failed on the Arkansas River. I think we need to quit wasting money on roads that dead end into woods and spend it where it would do some actual good. And I believe that money was federally earmarked, so it could not be spent anywhere else other than that.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up some interesting stuff there, Ben. Number one is Congress did away with earmarks. They were being abused at one point in time. So as a member of Congress, I have very little say, or actually no say, on where those highway dollars are being spent. That money goes to the states and the Arkansas Highway Commissioners, who are unelected. They're appointed by the governor. some fine people that serve on the Arkansas Highway Commission, but they're the ones that determine where that money is spent now. So I would like to have more input in how that money's spent. To do that, that would mean that Congress would have to bring back some kind of directed spending, which if it's somebody that's elected by the people, that's held responsible by the people for how they spend the money, I can see the positive side of that, especially if there's a better vetting process instead of committee chairman just loading up the highway bills with money going back to their districts. But you brought up also the issue about maintenance and crumbling infrastructure. That's where a lot of this money needs to be spent, I believe, if we do an infrastructure project, and that is to repair the infrastructure that we got. We got bridges that need work on them. You know, a lot of this money could be spent, and you won't see new and shiny things out of it, but hopefully you'll have more confidence as you drive over those bridges. For people on the call who don't know, my background is that I'm an engineer. I practiced engineering in Arkansas for nearly 25 years before I got into Congress. So taking care of the things you got and building them right to start with is very important to me. One issue that I'm working on that deals with infrastructure has to do simply with just infrastructure on federal lands. With me being on the Natural Resources Committee, we know that we've got a $20 billion backlog on infrastructure on our federal lands. If you've been to our national parks, if you've been to even things like Corps of Engineer campgrounds, you'll see that infrastructure is crumbling as well. So I'm working to try to come up with ways to address infrastructure on federal lands, infrastructure on our highways and transportation systems, and there's no end of areas that need our attention on infrastructure, with maintenance being right up there at the top. Okay, what time is flying? It looks like we're down to where we've got our last question, and if I got this right, it's Larry from New Edinburgh, down in South Arkansas again. What's your question tonight, Larry?
First of all, let me thank you for your recent timely response on the question about quality of internet service in our rural areas. But my question is about the health care bill, and my understanding is that you won't be able to go outside your home state to purchase coverage. Is that correct, and why?
Okay, now that's something that we're trying to get changed. I talked about this a little bit earlier in the call. Through the budget reconciliation process, where we're repealing as much of the Affordable Care Act as we can, and doing it with 51 votes in the Senate, the budget rules won't allow us to put purchasing insurance across state lines into that bill, because that is a policy that has to be changed, and we have to do that through a bill that goes to the Senate and requires 60 votes. That's in that third phase of health care changes we're planning to make, and I have no doubt it'll pass out of the House. It's been one of the things that we think will help create more competition in the marketplace, and I believe that once we get the new health care law in place, that there won't be as much resistance from the Democrats in stopping a common sense bill like this to allow you to pass or purchase health insurance across state lines. But that's why it's not in there right now, is because the budget rules won't allow us to do that. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining in on this town hall tonight. I look forward to the time when I get back in the district and we'll be able to meet with many of you in person. I do apologize for not being able to take all the calls and all your questions tonight. If you would like, you can stay on the line and you'll be prompted to leave me a voicemail, and we'll get back to you with with questions that you have that you may not have got to ask on the town hall. Again, if I didn't answer your question or you didn't get a chance to ask your question, you can stay on the line and you'll be prompted to leave a voicemail at the conclusion of the call. Thank you again so much. I thank Channel 29 for live streaming on Facebook. And y'all have a blessed night and look forward to talking to you soon in the future. Bye-bye.
The teleforum has ended.
Thank you for taking the time to participate in my teleforum. If you have any questions or comments for me, please leave your name and address after the tone. You can also contact me by calling my district office at 501-609-9796 or by visiting westerman.house.gov.
If you wish to leave a message, please press 1. Otherwise, you may simply hang up.